that, and then a lot going on.
God, the rich gets richer, huh?
Can you guys hear pretty good?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, perfect. Recording. Okay. Back, SEC Media Day, second year in a row, Joe Cook, and I believe your title has changed now, Managing Editor Inside Texas. Congrats, man.
Thank you.
Everything's turning up Texas Longhorns way right now, you know what?
Exactly. It's good to be here. I was at SEC spring meetings, and it was nice to be there. Let's just talk about, bureaucracy. Like, how many guys are we going to have on the team? What do you think about this settlement? And, not enough about, hey, what do you think the defensive tackle is going to look like? Now that we're here, we can ask about, like, what do you think the defensive tackle is going to look like, and not have somebody from the national organization like, we have a lawsuit to talk about. What do you do?
Right.
So this is exciting.
I don't know if you remember this, but a year ago when we met and you came to the booth, I said, hey, if Texas can beat Alabama, will they make the college football playoff? And you said yes. And I think they will be. I think you even said, I think they will beat Alabama. So credit to you, man. So is Texas going to do it again? I mean, you're a fortune teller here.
Here's the thing. When they beat Alabama, that was a sign of what type of team they had.
Right.
You beat an Alabama team by double digits at home, you got a good football team. You can go through the Big 12. You can play some C games in the Big 12, play some games with your backup quarterback, and still win. They did that. They go, 8-1 in Big 12 play. You can beat Michigan this year. Texas can beat Michigan. They could be a top 20-ish team, but that wouldn't be indicative of what they're going to face, when Mississippi State comes to town, when Georgia comes to town. Granted, there are some teams probably in the league that could probably play a B-plus game and still get by, but there are some teams that if they play a B-plus game, they're going to lose by 10 too. So going and winning that big non-conference game, I don't think it'll be like the big signal like it was last year, but still, you go to a place where there's 110,000 that just won the national championship, that still has a lot of great pieces, especially on that defensive line, and you come out on top. Still probably means Texas can do a lot of great things and be a big 12-team playoff contender too.
Is that the expectations? I mean, because obviously whenever we put something out Texas related, again, we're starting to appreciate the rivalry of Oklahoma to remind us, of past wins and things like that. But, as a Texas homer, are you anticipating a team that has an opportunity to maybe compete for an SEC championship year one in the conference?
Yeah, I think there are 4 teams that if you ask, you may find some people here who think there may be 5 or 6, something like that, but Georgia, Alabama, Texas, Ole Miss seem like the 4 teams that expect to be in Atlanta at the end of this year. Only 2 can make it, only 1 can win. I think Texas is within that 4. I think they're strongly within that 4. If they make it to Atlanta, that's great. If they win, of course, it's fantastic to do that in year 1. But I think what Texas fans really want, that at a minimum, which is crazy to think about, but it's a program like Texas, they want to be in that 12-team playoff.
Yeah.
And if you want to get more specific, they probably want a home playoff game. They don't want to be sneaking in, having to worry about rankings every week. They want to either be, sitting at home watching that first weekend and waiting to see what neutral site they go to, or they want a home game in mid-December at DKR. And, maybe if they make it to Atlanta and lose and get that 5 seed, then they're, probably playing Liberty. That's something they'd like to see, just to be able to have that home game, advance, and put themselves in position to maybe face the Big 12 champion again in the next round of the playoffs. So, and I know that's a lot of stuff, moving parts there, but to get back to the SEC, those 4 teams, they think they're part of those 4 teams that have a real strong shot, and they really think they have a good chance to be in Atlanta in early December.
Is it a stretch to say, I know everyone's excited about every year Oklahoma, and then this year Georgia coming to town, but could you see a scenario if everything breaks right for A&M, and let's say Mike Elko's he was a great coach at Duke, I thought. Mm-hmm. If he translates that to College Station, could you imagine a scenario where Texas' toughest game is at A&M?
I think so. Environment-wise, for sure. That's going to be the toughest environment they walk into. Going to be worse than the Fayetteville because they outnumber the Aggies outnumber the Hogs by about 30,000. So environment-wise, without a doubt. And a lot of the conversations I think that people have had about Kalen DeBoer in Alabama, just like, you're not Nick Saban, but you still have a lot of the Alabama roster. You still have these talented recruiting classes. You have really good coaches in Kalen DeBoer and the coordinators that he brought with him. Some of that still applies to A&M. They were decimated, maybe not decimated. They lost a lot in the portal. Walter Nolan's in Oxford now, not in College Station. that a lot of those recruiting classes, top 10 recruiting classes under Jimbo Fisher, a lot of them are still there. Connor Weigman's a big wild card. That's all to say that most of the conversations we have about Bama, you can have a light version about A&M, and that they're still probably going to be a pretty good team. Mm-hmm. They're probably going to be solid under Mike Elko and Colin Klein, and that last game of the year could have serious implications. So I think if you combine all that, thinking about where Texas thinks it should be, getting over that hump in a place that is going to be 110,000 hatred-filled people on a weekend where we give thanks, like that could very well be the toughest environment. I think it is the toughest environment, and obviously a contender for toughest game along with Michigan, Georgia, Oklahoma.
Yeah,
and I would imagine A&M fans, they'll never say this publicly, but like 8-4, if that includes a win over Texas, that's a good year.
1-11. It's a win over Texas, especially after 2011, where it's Justin Tucker yanking the hearts out at Kyle Field. They get them back in Kyle Field before Texas has not played in a renovated Kyle Field yet. So used to, it was a U shape. You had the 3 decks on each side, and then the end zone, and that was it. They had an open section toward the end, 85,000, something like that, still loud.
Yeah.
Now it's 110. Now it's all enclosed. Now it's all 3 decks, all 4 sides. Like, it is a larger environment than the last time they were there. And there's going to be some players on that Texas roster who have played there before, like Isaiah Bond, like Amari Niblack, some guys like that. But there are some players who, they were in grade school the last time this rivalry was played, and they know about it. Like, it's we're in Dallas. It is a phenomenon within the state of Texas. Like, when Texas would play TCU or Texas Tech on Thanksgiving, it wasn't the same. It wasn't the same, even at home, even on Thanksgiving night at DKR, it was not the same. Wasn't the same for A&M either when they hosted LSU. As much as they wanted that to be a rivalry, losing about 5 straight to start the series, finally getting one over after they dumped everything on Coach O and all the overtimes, like that was just an SEC matchup.
Right.
It wasn't a real rivalry. This is what a real rivalry is, and it's going to make that night and that game so much more fun.
Do you think that it'll ever get shifted to Thanksgiving?
I think they want it to be on there. And I know that there's a lot of different dynamics with that. Obviously, the Egg Bowl has kind of parked itself there, but even there, moving that to Friday now. The NFL, you're not going to compete, but if you have a tradition and you have people you want to be with and cater to, I say this about the NHL a lot. Does the NHL do a lot to maybe expand its audience? Kind of, sort of. Do they cater to the diehards? Yes. And if you want to cater to the diehards, if you're in Texas, you're going to have the Cowboys home game, whenever they play, and then you're going to have that game later that night. And if you are a college football diehard and not somebody living in, who knows where, just watching NFL, you're going to watch that game. And I think that's something that I would like to see come back. But if not, Thursday night, I love that Friday time slot. Yeah. I really am a big fan. And Saturday, even this year, is great because think of all the different matchups. You got Michigan, Ohio State earlier in the day. I forget that middle matchup, but I know it's a quality one, and you cap it off at night. Oh, it's the Iron Bowl. So you go Michigan, Ohio State, Iron Bowl, Texas A&M. That's hard to argue with, too. That's going to be a fun day of hanging out on the couch. But I'd like to see it on Thursday, and if not, on Friday after that.
What's the biggest question mark for the defense? You think it's either the interior, the defensive line, or the secondary? Where would you go?
I think it's the secondary. That interior of the defensive line, it's not going to be the same as last year. T'Vondre Sweat, Byron Murphy, top 50 picks, one's a first rounder. That's going to be tough to replicate, and that was tough for opponents last year. They could not run. Texas had the number 3 run defense, so they had to pass. They passed pretty successfully. There's a push and pull with total yardage.
Right.
Some of it works, some of it doesn't. But last year, Texas didn't do a great job of converting some of the pressure, specifically on the edges, into sacks. Michael Penix's game, and granted, Penix had a nuclear game against Texas, one of the best performances I've seen, but he was pressured like 15 or something times, but only brought to the ground once or twice. They need to be able to get more pressure, convert that pressure, and make it so the secondary doesn't have to cover as long. That's the big thing. Can they match pressure to coverage? I think defensive tackle is going to be different. It's not going to be dominant. They're going to try and moneyball it a little bit with Alfred Collins, Vernon Broughton. They have transfers in Tia Savea, Bill Norton, and one more, Jermaine Lole. they're going to be fine there. They're not going to be fantastic. They'll be fine. They're going to be great on the pass rush, better than they have been in a few years. But it's all about whether they can get some experienced and talented defensive backs to finally put it all together, put it on the same page, and convert some of those into PBUs, interceptions, and just dead plays.
You know, everybody outside Texas has talked about quarterback controversy. And I know it's come up a few times because it seems like everything, EA Sports football game comes out, it's all about Arch Manning. And there's no true quarterback competition down here, right?
Not at all.
Okay. And is there any scenario, though, that you see maybe – I don't want to say packages because that's not what they're going to do, but do you think that maybe we get yours out sooner than later, years past based off his injury, his situation?
I think so,
Yeah.
Just because the non-conference sets up that way. Colorado State is okay for a G5 team. You got a good quarterback. They're going to beat Colorado State. You got Michigan. That's going to be a challenge. ULM is in its first-year coach at a program that might be number 134 out of 134. And then UTSA, still a good program, great G5 program in the state of Texas, but they're rebuilding. They have a new quarterback. Their up cycle, or their up talent cycle, whatever you want to call it, just went out the door. So they've got a lot, and so that's going to give Texas some opportunities to probably put some points on the board and probably get Arch Manning in as well. And Steve Sarkisian's even said, I got to get my guys experience. And he's not talking just about quarterback. He's talked about that just across the board. Because if, let's say, Texas plays in the national championship game, that could be game 15 or 16. He can't run the same 30 guys out over and over and over. You need to get a lot of guys some experience. So if hey, all right, your turn, they're ready to go. And that applies at quarterback too. But like you said, Quinn Ewers has had multiple games missed in the last 2 seasons at Texas. He hasn't completed, I think, a full season healthy when he was playing a lot. Something his sophomore year, right down the road at South Lake Carroll. So there's no quarterback controversy, no quarterback competition right now, nothing like that. Quinn Ewers is a starter. Somebody's going to ask about it whenever Steve Sarkisian's at the mic, and he's going to say, nope, Quinn's our starter, and that's about all they're going to get. But he'd be foolish not to have Arch Manning ready just because Quinn Ewers has missed games during his Texas career.
Well, we've been setting that trap for everybody, and you wisely averted it, so credit to you, Joe. But, again, I realize they raided the transfer portal, so to speak, to help supplant the guys that left in the receiving core and that tight end. And fans get so excited for every transfer. Every transfer is going to be he's better. He's left because he wants to come somewhere better. We're going to make him even better than he was. But in my viewing of SEC football, I think even just look at Georgia last year. They added the best receiver at Missouri, the best receiver at Mississippi State, and they're like, my God, no one's going to be able to stop these guys. But it's very hard to transition the first year for a transfer to come in and be a dominant player in this conference. What is the level of concern is probably not the right word because they got players, but just will there be a drop-off at receiver after losing? I mean, I believe Texas is either 15th or 16th in returning receiving production. That's a question mark I have.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they lost Jordan Whittington, Xavier Worthy, A.D. Mitchell. They lost running back Jonathan Brooks. They lost Jatavian Sanders. It's your 5 skill position players right there. So they went to the portal to replenish the wide receiver room because not only did they lose those 3 to the NFL, just about a third of their room, they lost a couple more just roster churn. So they went to the portal out of necessity and out of luxury, and everybody sees the luxury part, but there was some necessity to it. But that's the big storyline. Can Quinn Ewers build rapport with someone like Isaiah Bond, who is going to be a lot different catching passes from Ewers and catching passes from Jalen Milroe? Can he build rapport with someone like Matthew Golden, someone who had, I think, 2 touchdowns against Texas last year from Houston? Silas Bolden, who, I don't know if y'all remember, Hakeem Grant played at Texas Tech, was on a Dolphins team, 5'8", 160, but faster than everybody. Can he build rapport with that type of player? Jonte Cook's in his second year. Can they build that relationship? Gunnar Helm is going to be the tight end. Can they, he's a 4th-year guy. He's been around for a while. But that's the big question. Can Quinn Ewers and Steve Sarkisian and all these guys win the battle against time that it takes to build rapport? No, I want it there. No, I want it here. That is a reasonable question. There's a very, very talented group there to try to answer it, but it's all about the chemistry and all about can they do it. And you can look at A.D. Mitchell last year and see that Quinn Ewers knows that, okay, I started with this guy here in January, went through spring, went through the summer, went through the conditioning drills, the throwing sessions, built it with one guy. Now you got to do it with 3 guys. I think it's a good foundation to build off of. But yeah, it is the question. One of the main questions on a Longhorn offense that talented, has a lot of returning experience, whether from Texas or from elsewhere. But putting it all together, I mean, even Lane Kiffin's been talking about that. I have a great roster. Do I have a great team?
Right.
Texas has great pieces. It's got to make those pieces come together for a great offense.
Did I was just thinking about your baseball coach there, and it got me thinking about last year when that Alabama job opened up. There was a lot of smoke, coming from Austin. Is Sark entertaining it? Was there ever any? Let me ask: did you think he filled the offer, or do you think it was even close?
So when that was going on, that was after Sark had won the Big 12 title, early January, right after Alabama had lost the playoff game. And by that point, Texas knew, Sarkisian knew. It's like, okay, let's get this extension finished up. It's time to make that happen. And that probably accelerated the timeline a little bit quicker of like, oh, we need to make sure we have this guy locked up. So, and I think even Steve Sarkisian's been pretty honest about it. It's like, I thought about it for a minute, and then I got a call from my athletic director. And it's like, all right, buddy, let's get this happening. So, I mean, it'd be denying human nature, I feel like, not to like think about it as far as any official like go-to-betweens and agents and that type of thing. Don't think that ever happened. I think Chris Lowe, who I think at ESPN everybody kind of assumes has a good bead on agent play in the SEC. I think he even wrote something like Alabama kind of figured Sarkisian wasn't available. And again, Sarkisian's talked about how he thought about it, but that doesn't mean that he called Greg Byrne. It's like, hey, so what type of number were you thinking? He knew that he was going to get something good at Texas from Chris Del Conte. Now he's college football's latest $10 million a year coach.
Yeah. So, fair or not, do you think this is an accurate statement that Texas would not be getting the level of hype that they're getting coming into this year had they not beaten Alabama last year?
Oh, for sure.
Right.
I think so. And granted, like I've been saying to a lot of different people, that win, it's having effects now, but that win gave Texas confidence that it had, as a program, had in some time. And it had bravado, without a doubt. It had thought it was the best thing ever. But then to go to Alabama, to win that game, to get back to Austin, kind of look around the locker room and think, that's a guy who is not out of place on the other side of the room. That's a guy who they wanted and Texas got. Like, that probably gave that team confidence to understand they can go do something this year. And they did. They win the Big 12, only lose to Oklahoma by 4, only lose to Washington in the playoff, 12 yards away. I think that game gave Texas a lot of confidence, and now it's carrying over into this year. That game gave them the confidence to go win the Big 12. They won the Big 12. They were a very good football team, a great football team. Now they are still a great football team. The challenge is probably more increased, but I think that win did a lot for the program, a lot of cathartic just emotions released or catharsis brought about. I can't remember how it goes, but that was a big win for the program, and I think that's why you saw Steve Sarkisian get a little bit, pretty happy and say, like, they'd said, like, the last 52 had walked in here and not win. Well, I guess they're 52-1 or something like that. So it was a big win for the program, no doubt.
I'm glad you said that because I'll set you up for that. What will it say for Texas if they beat Georgia this year? Does it go a step further that, again, it'd be stupid to say Texas is better than Georgia, because Georgia just won a bunch of national championships, but I think you could clearly make the case that Texas is just simply on Georgia's level if they can beat them on the field.
Yeah, I'll go there. Yeah, I think so. You look at the betting odds, and I even have this thing. It's like, don't get stuck in betting odds. Don't get stuck thinking like, okay, it is 1, 2, 3, 4 just because they're plus 300, plus 350, and that type of thing. But you still get to the point where those two teams are considered probably to be the two best in the league this upcoming season. And everybody still is safely saying Georgia's the number one team, pretty much consensus across the board. I wouldn't be surprised if they're unanimous number one come in a few days, whenever that poll is released. You can probably find Texas a pretty strong consensus number 2. if they win that game, and especially if both those teams win that game, or if both those teams come in undefeated and Texas wins that game, hard not to think that one of those that Longhorn team is going to be number one in the country in the following Sunday's poll. So I think that if Texas can win that game, they're not replacing Georgia as the top-notch program in the SEC, but I think they'd be the number one team in the SEC exiting that game for the 2024 season.
So, Joe, how many touchdowns do you think you'll beat Georgia? Hey, last question I got for you. You know, we got a lot of SEC homers on this show, and a lot of them travel well. They're going to be down there in Texas. We're talking about Florida. We got Mississippi State, Georgia, Kentucky. What are some things that they got to do on their list when they get down there? Because Austin's a big old town.
I think if you walk around campus, just like on campus, you'll find that it's pretty similar to a lot of any big state school campus that obviously are all across the SEC. But once you start getting into some of the places a little bit outside of campus, if you go just south of MLK, you're there in the middle of the political center of the state of Texas, right there in the Capitol. You go south of the Capitol and you go to, down South Congress. You look left on 6th Street, bars, nightlife. You look on the other side of 6th Street, bars and nightlife. You keep going, you cross the river down South Congress, a bunch of different shops. And it's just a city that has a lot of different things to offer for whatever you're looking for. If you're a food person, obviously everybody's going to talk about the barbecue and all that stuff. I saw y'all went to Terry Black's. There's a location down there that y'all need to go to as well, and it may be just as good. You have the barbecue. There's sushi. There's seafood. There's steaks, obviously. There's experimental
Keep going.
Yeah. There's so many different things down there that you can try. You can find the music. You can find some indie electronica band. You can find a one-man band. You can find somebody who's doing, Hank Williams covers all night. Like, you can find anything you're looking for in that city, and it's obviously unique. Nashville may be the only thing that's like it, but then again, Vanderbilt's Vanderbilt. And not to say that meanly, but it's a private school in a big city. This is a big public state school in a big city. It's the only show in town. If you ask any of the local TV people, they're like, it's like covering a pro sports team because there's an MLS team, but they are about the 4th or 5th thing in town, and because 1 through 3 is Longhorns. So it's a town that a lot of people have moved to, obviously, in the past few years just for a variety of reasons, jobs, economy, all that different stuff. A lot of them have embraced Texas, and it's just a town that really likes the Longhorns, loves everything about them, but it's not a town, I think, defined by the Longhorns. And I think if you go to a place like Oxford, and maybe not Baton Rouge, but maybe somewhere like Gainesville, like that's where Florida is.
Right.
That's where the Rebels are. The Longhorns are in Austin, but Austin's got more to it than that, and I say that as a very high compliment as someone who didn't grow up there, but who now lives there and loves living there too.
All right, last thing for you, Joe. Really appreciate your time. Of just rough ballpark, I'm sure you've not counted here, but the members of Inside Texas, what, like a percentage, do you think truly believe that Texas is going to come in here and win the conference first year?
Win the conference?
Because I've seen a lot of it.
Man, I bet I would say there probably a significant majority thinks they'll be in Atlanta. I think that they believe that as a top 2 team in this league, they will do what's necessary to win the games to get to Atlanta. I wish we knew what the tiebreakers were.
Right.
We don't know that quite yet. I think most, as fans and as optimistic fans, really think they'll be heading to Atlanta. I don't know what happens there. Football's a funny game. It's shaped weird. It can bounce a different way. There are probably some of that majority who think that they win the SEC championship too and are sitting at home watching with a 1 attached to their name during that playoff. So I think a lot expect to be in Atlanta. I think a lot expect to win. Just a little smaller number, but there's some big expectations here in year 1 in the SEC, and it's going to be fun to track.
And then, so I have to follow it up. Do you expect Texas to get there, at least to Atlanta? Not saying win it, but to get there.
I think they can. I really think they will get there. That October is going to define them. If they can, exit the first bye, they'll be having only played Mississippi State. You should win that game, even though the system that Jeff Lebby runs has given Texas problems in the past. if they can get through Oklahoma, get through Georgia with wins, and then get into the bye, it's a lot of time to feel good about yourself, but it's a lot of time to start feeling better and getting ready for, having to face Kentucky, Arkansas, Florida, A&M, all those teams, Vanderbilt on a road trip. Like that gives them that 3-0 record in SEC play. If they can get to that, I can see them taking the rest of the 5 and even going 4 out of 5. Again, we don't know the tiebreakers, but that still gives them a really strong chance of having to take another trip to Atlanta, especially with the way the rest of the schedule works out, with Georgia having to play everybody as well.
Right. All right, Joe, before you go, can you tell our audience how can they find you and give you a follow?
Yeah, head to InsideTexas.com. We're one of the On3 network affiliate sites covering the Longhorns. At Inside Texas pretty much anywhere. Our YouTube channel is Inside Texas Football. And then all my stuff's Joseph Cook 89.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much, man. That was great.
Guys.